Going now to Webster Griffin Tarpley, who's written the unauthorized biography of Barack Obama, George Herbert Walker Bush, and who 3 years ago, before Obama even got in office, said this will be the kamikaze model of playing states off against each other, funding CIA, MI6 groups to try to overthrow the Muslim nations, because this has all been stated as their plan, then coming in with air power behind them to back them up. What does this signify that Germany and Turkey have broken away from NATO? What does it signify for the first time ever to have the UN issue the order, and in less than 48 hours, about 26 hours, attacks to be launched with no congressional involvement? We're seeing some big moves here. What does it signify? Webster Griffin Tarpley.
Well, I would say, first of all, that the fact that the NATO and Obama have had to use military force. They've had to bomb Libya back into the Stone Age with massacres of civilians. This is a defeat for them, because their plan had been to use the model of the color revolution, the CIA people power coup, the National Endowment for Democracy putsch from behind the scenes, to do this all without military force. That was what they were able to do in Tunisia and then in Egypt. And, of course, the reality is that there's a military coup going on behind the scenes, and then you have this clown show of street demonstrations that the media try to say is actually causing it, whereas, of course, it's not causing it. It's just window dressing. Something like this is going on in Yemen today. There's a military coup behind the scenes. Some top general and a tribal leader have turned against the president of Yemen, and you have street demonstrations. But the reality is the coup. Now Obama is obviously embarrassed. You can see the sneaky, cowardly way that Obama started this war. Obama does not have the guts to give an Oval Office speech and look the American people in the eye.
Like George W. Bush did.
Yeah, even George W. Bush was a very blunt aggressor. He was an imperialist aggressor, and he made no bones about it, and he looked you in the eye and said, I'm an imperialist aggressor. But with Obama, it's all deception. And we have this charade going on. The U.S. is obviously the leading edge of the attack. The 125 cruise missiles fired in the night between Saturday and Sunday, that's the main guts of this attack. But instead we have the British and the French in some way in this charade, this dumb show, where they pretend to be the leading edge, and of course they're not. The French were able to get, I think, all of 15 aircraft over Cyrenaica, over Libya on Saturday. That's pathetic. But the U.S. cruise missiles are the ones that are doing the work. And now I think what you're seeing, though, because of this attempt to have propaganda showing the British and the French in the lead, this is going to lead to military chaos in the command and control structure. Because you already have the following situation. The Italians say, we will not allow Britain and France to use these critical bases, Sigonella in Sicily and elsewhere. We want the NATO command to do this, because we're Italy. We're not subjected to Britain and France. We are part of NATO. But then the French say, no, we can't do that, because we have these Arab puppet states that we want to participate. We have Qatar, the Al Jazeera base.
And by the way, a lot of them are starting to back out right now and having reservations because of how bad it looks at home.
Right, and that's it, Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. Now, today in Cairo, we had a meeting of the Arab League, and of course this Amir Moussa, the head of the Arab League, had been out in front demanding a no-fly zone. But this is a guy who wants to be president of Egypt, and he can see that the Arab street, the Arab marketplace, is now turning against the U.S. once again and against NATO because of this massacre that's going on. So we had this. And
even if they don't like Gaddafi, you got to root for the underdog.
Well, they don't like imperialist aggression, and Gaddafi is looking better and better by the hour. We had Ban Ki-moon, the U.S. puppet who is the UN Secretary General. He wanted to go to Tahrir Square and strut and posture and preen himself as a hero of democracy. And the Egyptian protesters have finally done something good. The Egyptian protesters are finally fighting the imperialists instead of acting as their tools. They wouldn't let Ban Ki-moon make his triumphal tour of Tahrir Square. And as you mentioned, Germany was never in this. They have tremendous doubts. The Turks are not happy. The Italians are the least happy of all, but they're so weak that they don't know what to do. Interestingly today, Putin says the UN resolution is in effect, a medieval call for a crusade against Libya. And Putin has drawn the lesson himself. He has ordered the doubling of Russian missile production so they can see the handwriting on the wall. Naturally, the fact that Russia and China did not veto this monstrosity last week in the United Nations.
They abstained.
This was not a profile in courage, to put it mildly. They could have stopped it. They should have stopped it.
Well, Webster, let me stop you there. Why are the globalists moving in such a naked way now? What is triggering this?
It is the war on the nation state itself. If you look at Tarpley.net or my Twitter feed, Webster G. Tarpley, I go through this question of all the countries in the Middle East are looking for a way to get out of the Anglo-American plantation. They don't want to be subjected to the United States anymore. In order to do that, you've got to make a deal with Russia, which Saudi Arabia had been doing. You've got to make a deal with China. That was the path chosen by Algeria, by Pakistan. Or you make a deal with Iran, and that was what Mubarak had been doing, and many others. So in order to get out of the empire, you've got to turn to some other power source, and that basically comes down to Russia, China, and to some degree, Iran. The U.S.-British answer to that is, well, if we can't control these puppet states anymore, these satraps or viceroys of our empire, we will destroy them. So you can see what they're going for. Sudan has been carved into two parts, mainly to prevent the Chinese from getting the oil in South Sudan.
That's their bare minimum in Libya. They want to break it with their group in the east.
And breaking it in this case means, in the case of Libya, it means an attempted return to tribalism with the tribes of Cyrenaica against the tribes of Tripolitania, the east against the west.
So that's the post-industrial tribal balkanization model.
Call it tribalism, call it warlords. It's the destruction of the nation state. So, in effect, if you want to defend human civilization, you have to take your stand in defense of the modern nation state. Not with the secessionists. You can see what it is, right? The guys in Cyrenaica are the secessionists. Yemen is being carved on a north-south axis. Pakistan, the whole goal of that guy, Ray Davis there, that he's accused by the Pakistanis of being a terrorist controller dealing in nuclear materials for a radiological...
But what triggered them to do something this dangerous? You've always said as the dollar starts to die, they were going to start a war to basically threaten everybody.
Well, if you look, I go through, I have a grid in this article that I've done on Tarpley.net. You go through the grid, and you can see that all of these countries, Algeria has got 40,000 Chinese workers building things, right? What do the Anglo-Americans offer? The Anglo-Americans come in there and they say, free market, free trade, deregulate, privatize, bust your unions, break up the state sector, IMF shock therapy. And, of course, that means you're going to be destroyed. And the West also then says, we're also going to meddle in your internal affairs under the...
So the bankers are declaring war, basically, on everyone. We're going to put your article up on screen from Tarpley.net. We're also going to post it, we forgot to do that, at Infowars.com right now. Marley's doing that. But I mean, so this is a desperation move, is it not?
Yes, it's essentially a simultaneous assault on the nation state, all across the world, and the leading edge is WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks last week published new documents proving that the president of Indonesia is corrupt and bribed. And you can see they're going through the entire CIA hit list is reflected in the choice of documents that come out with WikiLeaks. So WikiLeaks, I think, is clearly exposed as a CIA limited hangout self-exposure operation. But the targets of this are the governments that they want to overthrow. So it has parallels to the revolutions of 1848. You can see that in some other stuff that I've written. But the idea is to have a wave of destabilizations that leaves either the nations themselves shattered and divided and balkanized and carved, or maybe in some place like Egypt, which is harder to split up, a government that is so weak and so passive and pathetic that it can easily be ordered around.
Okay, Webster, what's the name of the headline of the article that you want us to put on screen?
Well, I would. The most recent one I did was Obama's Bay of Pigs.
Yeah, that's the one we've got. Where is this grid? Because I'm going to put it on screen.
The grid is the previous one. It's the one about it's essentially behind the orgy of destabilizations. You've got I think that's the beginning of the title. Behind the orgy of destabilizations is an attempt.
So where do the globalists go next after this?
Today it's Yemen, Bahrain. Again, Bahrain is targeted because the Bahrain royal family told the U.S. you're not allowed to use the base of the Fifth Fleet to attack Iran. Algeria is a target. Algeria is the other country in North Africa that has a lot of oil. And that's the place where they've tried to play the China card, right? Bouteflika has turned to the Chinese for infrastructure and development, and they're building everything. They're building highways and all sorts of infrastructure that the West, of course, refuses to provide. So, and then Indonesia, you can look towards them. I expect there's a good possibility of a shooting war with Pakistan. If the United States becomes bogged down now in Libya, especially if the ground invasion of Libya occurs, which I think is an eminent possibility, I don't see Gaddafi's forces being destroyed by this bombing attack. Maybe when the U.S. gets bogged down in Libya, the people in Pakistan will say, now it's time for us to invite the U.S. to leave, which means to cut that supply line that goes from Karachi to the Khyber Pass, the main supply line. The other thing to stress is the weakness of the imperialists. In 1991, when Bush the Elder attacked Iraq, he had 1,500 combat aircraft, 1,500. In 1999, when Clinton, Gore, and Blair struck at Serbia, they had 150 sorties the first day. This time around, 15 French aircraft. Now, there were then the 125 cruise missiles. But in terms of manned aircraft, the imperialists are going down, down, down. And I think Gaddafi has some surprises up his sleeve in a military sense. Why don't we say we don't want to find out what those are? Let's call a halt to this thing. It's time for a Democratic primary challenge to Obama. I don't know what anybody's waiting for.
All right, well, let me stop you there. Let me stop you there, Tarpley, because while we've got you in limited time, I want to look at what you just raised. We've got incredible hype right now that Gaddafi's going to launch terror attacks in Europe or the U.S. That will be then used as the excuse to push the full ground invasion and as a domestic police state clampdown to legitimize the TSA, the spy grid. I think that fits into their overall stratagem or strategies, their deceptive strategy to stage a terror attack. I think that's a real danger.
Well, they were harping on this repeatedly with Saddam Hussein, right? In 1991 for the first Gulf War, and then in 2003, they were harping and hyping on this, and it never happened. So I don't see that at all. I think Gaddafi is too smart for that kind of stuff.
No, they may stage it.
They may stage it, but I'm trying to say this won't be coming from Gaddafi.
Now, going back to ground invasion, you think that's in the offing? They've got the invasion ships off the shore, the troop ships. Give us your breakdown of why you think that could be imminent. Well,
you're dealing with the French-British imperialists. Now, this is the Suez Coalition of 1956. This has special characteristics. On the British side, these guys are the Colonel Blimps, right? They're the British generals who, you know, their latest exploits have been in Northern Ireland. They're essentially coming from a tradition of military losers. And on the French side, it's another tradition of military losers, going back to Vichy and Marshal Pétain. So this is not a pretty thing. But they're now claiming that the British and the French are going to take it over. The military forces of the French and the British are obsolete. The British are flying still these Tornado jet aircraft. The Tornadoes, Saddam Hussein shot down 7 Tornadoes 20 years ago in the first Gulf War.
Yeah, in the first 2 days, so they withdrew them from the field of battle.
These are not reliable planes. They're old. Now, there is this Eurofighter Typhoon. That's ultra-modern, but there the problem is that it's never been used in combat, so nobody knows what the bugs might be.
The truth is they haven't been running around like the U.S. engaged in constant wars, so they're not good at it like the United States is, drenched in blood.